Well, you just pointed it out. It's all about messaging for them, and they don't have a policy for the American people. What is their message right now? How do they juxtapose themselves with this administration? Everything is just anti-Trump, anti-Trump, and they can't win as a party if they are just singularly focused on that. Really quickly, Mark, was there any sort of polling on the independents or non-affiliated voters who are looking at the upcoming election or might be judging the president based off the past? If you pull it out of the Republican and Democrat Party, what do independents and non-registered affiliates say?
Well, look, the way the country, I think, works is independents by their nature are pretty divided. So when you have a poll showing 48% approval, that's going to be, 90% of Republicans, and it's going to be 50% or so, a little bit more of independents. So independents still are the kind of bellwether. They're really, I think, have really taken on some negative views on the Democratic Party. And I think they're taking a wait-and-see approach here to the president and his policies. Look, independents agree strongly that President Trump is doing a better job than President Biden. In retrospect, to them, President Biden looks even worse than he did at the time that Biden was president.
He's also making an argument by a hypothetical anecdote. He's saying that if I were murdered, then my children would not be interested in whether or not this... That's spitting on the graves of those who have been killed by illegal immigrants. That is spitting in the face of families who have to deal with the fallout from this every single day. And what really infuriates me is Democrats for years said there was no border crisis. There was no illegal immigration crisis. And until it started popping up on the polling that this was an issue their Democrat constituents also cared about, that's when they started acting, and they completely allowed the cartels to have their human trafficking and drug smuggling operation coming over into the United States. They only cared when it affected their political bottom line.
And it's even worse than that, Luke, because some of them are actually just lying. Like you had James Carville the other day say, oh, no, the border was totally secure before President Trump started focusing on this. I mean, a flat-out lie to your face, as if we are not aware that we've had 4 years under Joe Biden of a wide-open border of unvetted people, many of whom were criminals.
They think we're stupid. They genuinely think that we're stupid. We've had terrorist members come into our country, cartel members come into our country, and the Democrats have completely looked the other way. And now they're running campaign advertisements saying, I will work across the aisle with Republicans to fix this issue. In the past election, they were even saying they would work with Donald Trump, some of these Democrats in swing districts, saying they would work with him to fix the issue when they were completely turning a blind eye to it for years and years.
And it's continuing, I think. Luke Ball, jump in here.
Hey, Congressman, when I was on the Hill, it was pretty much set that if you were explaining the message, then you're not winning the message. So my question to you is, as the Democrats argue that Republicans want to cut Medicaid and Social Security and they're pulling away at some of the folks that need this money, what is the Republican Study Committee and what is the Republicans' message to those folks that say you are trying to cut Medicaid and Social Security?
Well, it's a lie that Social Security is involved in this. And with regards to Medicaid, we're preserving the program, we're protecting it, we're making sure that it's sustainable for the future. And the Republican Study Committee is committed to making sure that we garner savings. This is the one chance. We know Democrats will never tackle the $37 trillion in debt that the United States has. So the Republican Study Committee is the force that pushes our leadership, that pushes our country towards conservative policy, which is getting back to fiscal health. President Trump is reordering a system that needed reordering. Everybody can take a deep breath. We're going to get this done. And it is going to end up with an economy that is stronger than we have ever seen.
This is crucial because my generation, millennials and Gen Z, are a generation without a cause. They are looking for something to take the mantle of. So they work their whole life to get to these colleges and institutions, and they're highly malleable students. And when they get to these institutions of higher learning, what are they met with? Professors that are overwhelmingly liberal and embrace cultural Marxism. And in 2022, there was a study, only 26% of faculty at four-year colleges and universities claim to be conservative. And that just depends on how you define conservatism. So 75% overwhelmingly liberal and left-leaning. So when you look at our colleges and the outpouring of hate and anti-Semitism, look to the professors, because in the aftermath of the October attacks, you had professors saying that it exhilarated them to see what happened to Israel and what Hamas was doing over and over again. And that's just when the spotlight was shown on them. So when we're addressing anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism on college campuses, let's be clear. This is not a First Amendment issue. It is a privilege, not a right, to be on these colleges and universities, and we get to figure out who we incubate to be the next generation of leaders in our country.
It's a great point, because young people, as a result of that and so many other things, young people are supporting President Trump.
Yes.
I spoke with Charlie Kirk about it on Sunday. He runs, and is the founder of Turning Point USA, and he said it's because this is the generation that has been so abused by the former administration.
For sure.
Here's Charlie Kirk with me on Sunday. Watch this.
They made a dark deal with the radical trans elements of their party. They made a dark deal with the open border lobby, and they also made a deal with this ever-growing, disturbing anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Western force that we've seen embedded on college campuses, which is this emergent pro-Hamas coalition. A lot of their base is sympathetic with their complaints, and they cannot shed it. So, in fact, they have to now go into the 2026 midterms and go into the 2028 midterms married to those three very unpopular anti-American forces in our country.
And he says, young people have gotten this message.
So, Maria, in addition to this, in addition to being told that we're supposed to go to these institutions of higher learning, these colleges, not only do we graduate with this impression of cultural Marxism, but we are also saddled with student loan debt. We're getting degrees in underwater basket weaving and genderqueer studies, things that aren't applicable in the real world. And people are looking at this, and they're seeing folks that are graduating before them and thinking, why would I want any part of that? Why would I ruin my career? Because these people that were lied to on these college campuses, that got caught up in the Hamas protests and the anti-Israel protests, now have their careers ruined and destroyed because of what they were told at these colleges.
Yeah. And what happens? They just have stuff in the computers and then they just don't check it again?
Yeah, they don't check it. They don't update things. And it's why I asked Congressman Pfluger a little bit earlier, what is the Republicans' answer to the Democrats saying you're going to touch Social Security and grab that third rail of politics, or Medicare, Medicaid? If you're getting rid of the fraud and abuse, that is a positive thing for those who have paid into these systems for so long. But the Democrats would rather see America fail than Trump succeed, which is why Republicans have to be so sharp on this issue, because to your question, why haven't they done anything about it? Folks are afraid to touch it because the other side is going to attack them and say that you're trying to come in and actually take away money, when in reality, you're just trying to reallocate this taxpayer money back into systems that actually work.
And nobody should be in Congress in this position of power for 40 years. You forget who you're working for.
Chuck Schumer was saying chaos. This is what happens when someone comes to D.C. and actually fulfills their campaign promises. The Beltway's not used to that. They're not used to folks coming up and executing their agenda in the first 100 days, actually getting things done for the American people. They're used to it drawing out, because what do they use these campaign promises as? A reason to go back and say, hey, re-elect me so I can go back. And that's where it comes into play here, where you're saying term limits. They don't want term limits because they need that job. They need to get in bed with these swamp lobbyists and the folks that are part of the establishment in D.C. to continue this mess, because they make money off of it. So they won't solve the problem because it'll put them out of a job effectively.
But think about the campaign season and what we all went through during the 4 years of the Biden administration. All of the hate and the crazy lunatic Trump derangement syndromes that were out there. Why? Because they were afraid of him.
Yes.
They were afraid that a business guy is going to come in and start looking at things in a business way and recognize we're spending too much.
And I want the guy the swamp doesn't want.
Exactly.
I want that person that the swamp is so terrified of. They will throw the judicial branch at him. They'll throw lawfare at him. They'll throw every single thing. They tried to get him off the ballot. They tried to throw him in prison. Literally every tool and utensil that they could have thrown at him, they did, and they failed every single time, because the American people are stronger than any of their weapons.
They failed every time, but let's not forget they were also successful in putting this, this idea and narrative out about who Donald Trump is.
Right.
And they did. I mean, look at what Mark Penn told us earlier in the show. Luke Ball, final comments.
We were talking about it during the break. When the chairman of the Intelligence Committee says we can't trust our intelligence agencies, we have a problem. It goes all the way back to Peter Strzok's Page Mueller report, witch hunt. Fix this, folks. We have to fix this and have confidence in our intelligence agencies.
By the way, the judge that screwed over Carter Page, Boasberg.
Oh, how about that?
Imagine that.
Yeah. What a surprise. Boasberg keeps coming back, Judge Boasberg.